Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys with our new special host, Poochie.
Hey, I'm Poochie, all to the extreme.
Yeah, this is a bad idea. Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, where if you got that reference, then you're probably at the age you need to start scheduling a prostate exam. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian, and I don't think that's quite true because even the oldest episodes of Simpsons are younger than us.
Brian, we're pretty old.
You
we're
know what?
we're not what?
Our the age doesn't start with a four yet, so I don't think that.
No, we're old. We're closer to 40 than we are to 30.
No, we're not.
Oh wait, no,
Actually,
my wife is. We're almost there. We're almost
ooh,
35 in a
way to
month and
old,
a half.
way to old shame your wife.
Yeah, that's what I do. Every day I just wake up and I just look at her. I'm like, you're so old. She loves that. Follow me for more marriage tips.
Well, you know what? Your marriage has been going on for over 10 years, so I guess you're doing something right. Okay, make fun of your wives.
Do that. Hey, for those who didn't understand the Poocha reference, I think a lot of you did, because I think we got some Simpsons fans on here. But Simpsons did a lampshade of kind of what we're going to talk about in this episode of when TV shows would add this new character and be like, we're going to try and keep things cool and fun and fresh. And so they added this Poochie character, the Itchy and Scratchy show, and they voiced it with Homer Simpson. And after its debut, everyone hated it. This huge write-in campaign. This is in universe in the show. All these characters wrote into them. So for the second episode, they immediately get rid of this character. They don't even have Homer come back to voice him, and they don't even like bother animating him very well. They just like kind of cut out the mouth and like, I must go. My planet needs me. And then they like slowly move the sprite up the screen. And then there's like this like little title card of like, Poochie died on the way back to his home planet. And then Krusty comes on. He's like, good news, everyone. Poochie's dead. And all the kids like, yay. So
That's similar to what they did with Billy leaving Power Rangers because he walked off set and they had an episode where there was a malfunction and he aged up and he was an old man for an episode and then he had to leave the planet to go to a different planet to get aged back, and when they aged back they said, oh, the connection's not super well, and it's like old footage of Billy with a new person like static like I'm gonna stay here now.
and I think they stole that from MASH. Like I think that was the inspiration because MASH was the oh my gosh, my brain's not working this week, guys. So a character who died, and oh my gosh, I can't remember, but the character that died, and all you MASH fans are like, Matt, how do you not know this? Like they had this title card of like he died on the way to off base, and so that was like this huge shock, and people were like crying about it, like this character that they loved, and without showing the death on screen. So I think that's where they're going for
Yeah,
with that. I'm sorry, I know TV stuff. I know MASH. I watched it. I just my brain is broken this week. I'm not gonna lie.
MASH is one of my gaps. I had an idea like it'd be interesting to talk about our like gaps in TV knowledge of the popular shows we haven't seen, but what would we even talk about? Like I haven't seen this show, so I have nothing to talk about it. Like it wouldn't be a good podcast, even though it's an interesting idea, I think.
Yeah, Henry Blake. That's it. Duh. Yes. So okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And Radar was like, guys, he died. All right. Anyway. Well, okay. So today
Yes.
we're gonna talk about again. This is gonna go really well, everyone. I promise you. So
It's like we've had this conversation before.
I don't know. So we're gonna talk about characters that were added to shows that just they sucked. Every show does this. Every show adds new characters, and
Mhm.
sometimes they add some really good characters that like make the show better, but
Yep.
other times they don't. So Brian, who's a character that was added to a show that just was terrible?
I'm going to use this pick to kind of talk about a trend that happened a lot in shows, especially in the 80s and 90s, where it's a family show and you have a little kid, a little cute little kid, and then that cute little kid starts getting older, starts becoming more of a teenager, and they're not as cute anymore. So like, okay, we're going to get a newer, cuter kid. And so then like sometimes it works. Like I think Raven on the Cosby Show was a really good addition. She had a really good energy and everything. But one thing that was really unnecessary was Nikki, who is the little brother who was added on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He was just really not necessary. And it's because like they added him like, oh, Phil and Viv have a baby. And then like they didn't do anything with him. And then to get stories with him the next season, they age him up. Like, oh, now he's 5. And it's like, and they even make a joke. Will kind of goes like, whoop, and I kind of did like a motion with my hands to Jazz and be like, yep. And then, but then even then, he was never a huge part of the cast. He was just kind of there, and he got like some of the cute kid moments. But it's like, did we really need it? We could, I mean, because Ashley was kind of moving away from that cute little kid role, but they were still doing interesting things with Ashley. I think when Ashley got older, she had more storylines and more to do. So why bring in Nikki to just not do anything? And you see that on like Full House and Cosby Show and Growing Pains, and I'm sure there's so much more that I'm missing where they have to.
Or
like,
in My Family. Like,
yeah,
you know, we had my brother, and then they're like, we need a newer, cuter kid, and so
mm-hmm.
then my parents had me, and they added me to the cast. So,
I thought you were going to talk about how you and Angie every couple of years had another kid for a while.
oh yeah, no, that too. We also were like, oh come on, and then we had Miles. Like, finally, this will boost our ratings.
Yeah. So that's just the trend that I noticed, and I embodied that with the pick of Nikki from Fresh Prince.
There you go. That's a trend that like I didn't watch too much of these TGIF shows or the after school programming when it was on. I was still in like a cartoons age. Like after school, I would watch like Batman animated series or Pokemon or something like that. I was into cartoons a lot more than I think I was like live action shows. But even to this day, like I still have not watched too much of any of those shows that you mentioned, apart
It's
from
kind of
you
past the
making me
point.
watch them. Yeah.
Those are the kind of shows where if you don't watch them for the first time as a kid or a teenager, you're never going to have that nostalgia. Like if you watch Boy Meets World for the first time now as an adult, you wouldn't like it as much. And I would definitely
Yeah.
put Boy Meets World in that category. I think that's probably the only show in that category that you really watched a lot of.
Yes. Yeah, I would put that in that category too.
Mm-hmm.
I caught it at the tail, like, because I think Boy Meets World was off the air when I started watching it, but I saw some reruns on Disney Channel when I was a teenager, and I liked it at that point. I was still at a young enough age, and culture was still in that same realm where it didn't feel like outdated yet.
I
So
watched about the last half of Boy Meets World live. Like I know I was caught on the later high school years because I remember watching the Shallow Boy episode live and then the college years. But
mhm.
I went back later and watched the early stuff, which I was not watching because we were little when that was on.
Yeah, there's a lot of shows like I kind of caught up through like reruns. Friends was one I didn't watch it when it was on. I didn't watch. We did watch Everybody Loves Raymond when it was on, but we got kind of like caught up to it in like the 6th or 7th season when it was already in syndication.
Yeah,
Um,
same. Like most shows I watched, I caught on to it. Like I don't because
yeah,
I didn't watch Raymond at the beginning. I watched Raymond at the end. Like I think
yeah,
by the time I caught on, Amy was already in the gang.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, for picks of bad TV characters, I'm just gonna really quick jump into one that I think honestly sparked this episode for us because a couple
Yep.
weeks ago we were talking about that 90s show,
Yep.
and we brought up a character from that 70s show that was to me one of the epitomes of like just a bad character to add, and that was Randy from that
Mhm.
70s show.
Yeah.
Now Randy was that character that they kind of took a bit of Kelso and they took a bit of
Eric.
Eric and they mushed it together, and it didn't really work. This character just ended up being there, like there wasn't anything special about him. And then they also had the added negative effect of kind of torpedoing Donna's character, because Donna, like her love story with Eric, sure it had its ups and downs, and sure, you know, it's not like the best romance there is, but there's this cuteness of like,
Yeah.
oh, they've been next door neighbors for all these years and childhood
Mhm.
loves and all that sort of stuff. And then for the moment Eric leaves, for it to be like, well, she can't have a time where she's single. She just needs to have this other guy that she pines after.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like he was there for, instead of Donna having any sort of standalone traits as a character.
Yeah.
It was all about how she cared, how she wanted this new guy that wasn't all that great to begin with. Now that showed like there's a lot that they screwed up in that last season, and Randy kind of gets like the lightning rod of hate for it. But I mean, like, they didn't know what to do with anyone. And I know that you and I kind of have talked about that season before,
Yeah.
and like really the best part of it we both have said is like the Hyde and his dad,
Yeah.
that whole storyline. Like that's good,
Mhm.
but everything else is
Well, I think when the show's been on that long, adding a new character like the main group of the cast just never really works. I think Friends
yeah,
did it well because in the last couple of seasons they added Paul Rudd as Mike, but Mike wasn't
yeah.
ever added to the main cast. Mike was a Phoebe supporting character. He could be around sometimes, but he wasn't like, now there's 7 friends.
Plus, that's Paul Rudd. Like
Yeah.
that's a character that you can get away with adding, and you're like, you know what, this is great.
Like who even plays Randy? Somebody thinks something.
His name is Lloyd. No, I don't know. That's not true.
I could look it up, but I'm not going to because I don't care that much.
Yeah, exactly. That's how much Randy is worth to us.
Yes. So is that all you had to say about Randy?
That's all he deserves to be said about Randy.
I'm gonna want. I know you might have a little different opinions on this one, but Nikki and Paolo from Lost, because Nikki and Paolo came in season 3, and like they've been around the whole time. Who are these guys? And then they quickly realize, oh, the audience doesn't like this. So then we're gonna wrap them up in an episode and not even make them good people. We're gonna make them murderous thieves and bury them alive. And then we're just barely ever going to mention them again until
Yeah.
Miles is like, "Hey, you know there's diamonds over there, right?" Like that's the only mention of them post death.
Yeah, I I don't like dislike Nikki and Paolo as much as there's a lot of people who just really hate them, and I don't dislike it as much. But I do agree that there's merit to it because it was an experiment that they pulled the cord on really quickly, and I think because if I remember kind of the behind the scenes stuff of season 3. So season 3, they did these 7 episodes at the beginning of the season, and then they did like a 3-month cut, and then they did all the rest of this episodes back to back because people were tired of like when you're watching Lost, like I don't like having to watch a great episode and then you wait 2 weeks and then you have to watch another good episode. It's like, well, we want to eliminate that, so we're going to try and have no like weeks in between,
Yeah,
so it's all
like-
going to just air at once.
Like they have to have some break for production reasons. So like do one break and then the rest.
Yeah. So there so like exactly, but the time between like when there was that big break, because the first 7 episodes were kind of, I don't know, it was like the rest of the season 3 was better than those first 7 episodes. Because the first 7 episodes had Jack's tattoos, and that was just a terrible filler. Like, what episode was that?
Yeah.
So anyway, during that time, they're like, okay, we're realizing that what we need to do is we need to have an exit strategy on this show, and we need to know when we're going to be done. Instead of
Yeah.
opening more and more doors, we need to start knowing how long we have to tie up loose ends.
Yeah.
So they announced we're going to be only doing 6 seasons. In that season 3, they announced, okay,
Yeah.
we're 6 seasons and we're done. So I think they realized like they had started this experiment with Nikki Paolo. They had this extended break where people hated them. They're like, all right, we don't have enough time to flesh out what we want to do with them, so we're going to kill them. And I have to say, like, the episode that they killed them in and like the buried alive, like that's a neat twist for a TV show. It's pretty dark, and it's like, holy cow, they went to a weird spot that I wouldn't expect them to go to. So I go to bat a little bit for them, even though I'm not going to say they're so great of characters. I just don't hate them as much.
I think it was always just also it's bad timing. Like, yeah, I get there was always other people around. We knew that there was more people who survived the plane crash than our main characters. But beginning of season 3, a lot's going on. You know, Echo got kidnapped by bears. The other, you know, Jack and Kate and Sawyer are kidnapped by the others, and everything's like there's a smoke monster going on, and everything's happening. And then while all of that's going on, like, okay, well, hey, who's this new girl coming around? And they really push them right to the front, like, Locke, what's happening? What's going on with Jack? Is what Nikki is saying. And who the hell is this girl? Like, what the heck?
I really love just your explanation. Man, Echo got kidnapped by bears?
Yeah.
That just sounds like something like Creed would say.
Yeah.
And people would be like, what are you talking about, Creed?
Well, it's kind of like, remember when Creed was saying the stuff that happened, and
Yeah.
most of it is made up. He's like, we had a funeral for a bird, and Jim's like, that's not real. But that part was real. They did have a bird funeral.
They did have a bird funeral, 100%. And that's what was great. It's like, you know, no one would believe it, especially the way he presented it. But.
Yeah, like Lost added so many great characters into it after a while. I mean, Ben and Juliet and Desmond and Daniel Faraday. There's so many great characters that they're able to I'm talking that they were able to successfully add,
Yeah.
and then Nikki
So
and
it's like,
Paolo just weren't.
yeah, we're not going to knock the show for trying because there were some fantastic characters. I mean, I even like Dr. Marvin Candle. I like his character, and especially when they gave him more agency with Miles and having their father-son relationship. But the character that I didn't like that they added was Ana Lucia. So she pops in for season 2,
Yeah.
and she serves as a bit of an antagonist for our not the what's the opposite of the tail section, the regular section of the
Yeah.
plane, our beloveds that we
Yes.
know. She kind of is a little bit of this antagonist because we see kind of her point of view, and we can understand and we can logically get why she's the way that she is because of what she has experienced in those 48 days on the island. But yet, like, you still have other good characters. Like, Bernard's a good character from the tail section. Echo's a good character from the tail section. Even Libby could have been a good character from the tail section if she didn't die at the same time as Ana Lucia.
Yeah.
Spoiler
They set her
the
up
show.
for stuff, and they were building within like, oh no, we don't need her.
Yeah, it's like you both got a DUI, so we're not going to have you on the show anymore. They're like, but Jin got a DUI. It was like, yeah, but we like him.
Yeah,
Like,
you know what?
right.
We're gonna make everybody think he's dead like 3 times in the series. That's gonna be his thing.
Yeah, then he'll never do that again. That's for sure.
Yeah. Ana Lucia could have been a good character. Like she was vital to that storyline of getting Sawyer and Jin and Michael back and connecting them. She was part of that story. But going forward, they waited too long to soften her up. They didn't really soften her up until like right before she died. And she was just annoying. Like at that point, like they're on the same side. Like she can be all gung ho, like yeah, against the others, but she was like that against the people from her own flight. And so that was the issue. Was like I get it. You have an enemy, but be mean to your enemy. Don't be mean to our main characters.
Yeah. And you're right. She could have been a good character because she was a female Sawyer. Like, I mean, not to that exact degree, but she had that same character type. And so they did a great work with Sawyer, especially in later seasons. They easily could have done some great work with her. But
yeah. And I think she also from the start only wanted to be in one season. So I think they knew that they weren't going to have her around more than season 2. But it's hard because there's a lot of great stuff in season 2. I love the Hatch, but that is one of the things like, it's the Ana Lucia season.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, okay. So I just did Ana Lucia. What do you got?
I'm going to talk about a show you haven't seen, but kind of embodies what things do, which is you have a show about high school or teenagers, and then they like turn into the college years. Like sometimes it's a specific show, like Saved by the Bell did Saved by the Bell, the college years, which is stupid and dumb and don't watch it. But some other shows like Boy Meets World, or in this case, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the show keeps going. It's like, and now it's season 5 or whatever, and they're in college and they ditch a lot of the main characters and they have them in a new dorm room with new roommates, and it just becomes like a whole new show. Sabrina the Teenage Witch did that, and she got all new roommates, and one of them was played by, I don't even know her name, the redheaded girl from Clueless. And it's just she's the type of character that you hate, Matt. She would go on our divas list where she's just all full of herself. I'm so much more important than everybody else. Look at me, how great I am. Like, oh, you have a problem with something? Well, I might have a zit forming over here, and I'm so much more important. And it's just, she didn't add anything of substance. And yeah, of course, there's always going to be times where it's like, yeah, we're friends, girl power. But for the most part, she's just there to be annoying and to make Sabrina look normal in comparison.
Yeah, you had me hating her at Redhead.
Oh, that was it? Okay.
That was the Angie's pick, to be honest. Like, I know that she would, if she was here, she would bring this one up because she talks about how this character ruined this show for her completely. And that is April from Gilmore Girls. So
okay.
Angie,
say your piece.
like,
I'm gonna disagree, but say your piece first.
So April is one of those characters that gets brought into the show just for the agency to break Luke and Lorelai up. And, as much as we talk about how, like, Lorelai like Luke deserves better than Lorelai for sure, that still you have this, like, you're rooting for them. Yes. So you have this immediate dislike for a character that is only there to break them up. And that's fine, but then you also have to make them very likable. And she is a very aggressive personality. She's not like rude specifically, but she's very opinionated and
Hmm.
very stubborn. And so, like, to have a character like that, it makes it hard to be endeared to them when you're already starting off with the vantage point of, I don't like you and what you're here for.
Okay. I will admit the storyline where she breaks up Luke and Lorelai, which I don't think she did. Okay, I'm going to rephrase that. So the storyline that Luke and Lorelai broke up that late in the game after we finally got them together. It finally happened. They didn't even kiss until the season 4 finale, and they had the wedding planned out. That was a bummer, and it really sucks. And they kept them apart until the very end of the series. We didn't even get to see a wedding until the finale, and even then, it wasn't the greatest. But back to April, it wasn't April's fault. It was Luke's fault for not telling Lorelai that she had a daughter. If he had a daughter, if he had told Lorelai right when he found out, like, hey, I just found out I have a daughter. I didn't know about this. That wouldn't have been a betrayal. She would have been on his side. They would have been able to work through it. And if you're saying, oh, the writers decided to bring in April, the writers decided to write Luke not telling Lorelai right away, you know? And April, maybe she wasn't a great character, but she's a teenager. You're saying she's like abrasive and annoying, and you're describing what a teenager is. All the teenagers on the show have had jerk moments, including April. So that's just normal. And I think she was brought in not just Matt. He keeps like starting to talk, and then I keep going. Like, I think that she wasn't just brought in to be that foil. I think she was also brought in to bring a new dynamic to Luke. And Luke is my favorite character. I like all of the Luke supporting story, like Luke and his sister, Luke and Jess, even Luke and Lorelai at times, Luke and the diner. It's all great. And so this is a new avenue, seeing Luke, who's like been parent adjacent to like, Jess and Rory and even Lane at different times. Now it's like he is literally a parent. He has to fight for custody. He has to figure out how to be a parent, how to interact and relate to this brainy 12-year-old girl who's suddenly be like, hey, you're my dad. That is a really interesting story concept. And I think that the breakup of Luke and Lorelai should not be contributed to April.
Like, if we're talking about human beings, you're right. Like, when there's a kid being there, like a person existing should not be blamed for someone breaking up. And so, like, you talking about the writers, and that's my point too with the writers. Like, sure, they made Luke do that, but it's like the invention, the creation of April existing was, to me, to break them up. I think you're right that they got some good mileage out of, or some different mileage out of giving Luke more agency with her.
Mm-hmm.
But they also had that with man, I'm blanking on names. Was it Jess?
Yeah.
His nephew? Yeah, Jess.
Yeah.
And I liked that dynamic. I thought that was a really great dynamic to have,
Mm-hmm.
to see Jess versus Luke a number of times, and them just like both trying to have some sort of relationship. And Luke, to me, is like the one of the best characters on the show. So I
Oh,
agree
yeah.
that I like to see more of Luke and more of his interactions and the things that make him tick. But I didn't think that the April Luke dynamic was there enough to make me appreciate April.
Oh.
I don't hate her as much as Angie does, but I don't like her.
Some people like equate her to like Robert California. Like, I don't. She's nowhere near that. Like, I think the show is at its best before April. I think 3 through 5 is Gilmore Girl's strong suit. But even so,
Yeah.
I am not one who says, "Oh, April ruined the show." No, I think what ruined the show is Amy Sherman Palladino and Daniel being fired from the show in season 7, and them not being able to write the last season.
Yeah. I think that there's a way too that when you bring in a character that is going to upset the balance between a popular relationship in the show, especially one that, like, I think Lorelai and Luke is like
Yeah.
the relationship that people will care about in that
Yeah.
show. When you bring someone in to disrupt that, you also have to go out of your way to make them likable. And I think that, like, Pete from The Office
Yeah.
was an example of like them understanding we can't make him have negative aspects. Like, if
Yeah.
you look at Pete, there wasn't any big character flaws that he had because he was added so late in the game, and he was added just to break up Andy and Aaron. Even if you're like, that was a weird love relationship anyway because of the age difference, whatever. Like, I get it, but they knew that they were breaking up that couple, and so
Yeah.
to do that, they also brought in a character that he was flaccid, and he was just kind of plain and vanilla,
Yeah,
but he
he was
wasn't
unnecessary.
offensive. Yeah, he was unnecessary, but he wasn't offensive, and I think that's what they were going for. It's like just a normal guy
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Or
So
another route, like no one really talks about that much about when they added Kathy in, but because Kathy was kind of similar, where she's like, "Ooh, I'm gonna try to get Jim to sleep with me." But the thing about that is that Jim never even for a moment considered it. There was never a Jim like, "Ooh,
yeah,
am I gonna cheat on Pam?" Like, no. So it was just this dumb girl making a fool of herself, and that was it.
yeah, and then they tried that again with the boom operator guy, but he was another one that they didn't really like. You knew right when he stepped in that is like they're going to try and do something there, and even though like Pam never considered it on her end either,
Yeah.
still like you're predisposed to like him, even though he was a kind person, like standing up for Pam. Like that's good of him to step in there and be a human friend for her.
Yes.
But you still were like, I don't trust this guy.
It also brings the question like we've had 7 years of emotional moments, or 9 years at that point of emotional moments, and this is the one moment you step in. Like, there's been other times you could have stepped in too.
Yeah, yeah, agreed.
Like, they
But
watched the cleaning crew destroy the Halloween decorations and said nothing.
they didn't intervene when Kevin's chili was spilled. No one grabbed a towel. No one helped him.
Yeah. So I think going into the office, I'm guessing you have an office pick.
I do. And there's a lot that could probably be on here. Like you ask
Yes.
anyone and people have their opinions. I saw a list where people were talking about like, oh, unnecessary characters, Andy Bernard. I'm like, okay, hold your roll there.
Yeah.
He had a couple really good seasons. It's not his fault he got like butchered at the end.
He
And
had
even if you
mostly good
never really
seasons.
yeah, even if you never really liked him in his peak of like season 3 to 5, like still he's a valid part of the office. I liked
Yes.
him.
Hmm.
But who I didn't like more than Robert California is Nellie.
Agreed.
And we've talked about this too on our other pod, like especially when ranking people, because like when we were ranking characters, was she at the bottom?
Todd Packer was at the very bottom, and then she was last. She was next.
Thank you. Yeah, she to me, I maybe even would put her below Todd Packer.
Oh, I would too. Andrew was the one who put Todd last, and then because he had.
Thanks, Andrew.
I mean, I don't mind Todd. Not like Todd Packer was my number one by any
No,
means.
no, like I think Packer would be right above Nelly, but that's what she said. Anyway, so
Of course.
that's what he wanted too. So anyway, so
Yeah.
Nelly, when they introduced her, like they introduced her as that interview candidate, and it's like, okay, she's just weird. Fine. Then they bring her back for not Tennessee, Florida,
Yeah.
for the Jacksonville storyline, and it's like, okay, she's fine in this role as like kind of not a villain, a little bit of antagonist,
Yeah.
but this is a fine spot for her to play. Then she came to Scranton. That's where it's like, this is the big mistake.
Yeah.
And so like they tried to do better by her in the next season after that. They definitely softened her up, but still just an introduction to Scranton was so off-putting. It was a huge jump the shark moment because it was no one would do this. No one would come into an office and sit down and be like, yeah, this is my chair as the manager. And then no one would respond the way that Robert California did. Very few people would respond the way The Office did. It wasn't intriguing. It was annoying. Even if you're not on Andy's side, you're still like, this is wrong.
Even Angela, she was like, Angela, Doc Andy's page. She's like, got it. Like, why does Angela have beef with Andy? Remember, she was the one who cheated on Andy. Not like Andy didn't do anything wrong to her.
Yeah. And I feel like Angela's a bit more of a rule follower, even though she breaks the rules so much. But I think in her heart, she has this like desire for leadership and stability and all that sort of stuff, because like that's what Dwight has, and so she loves Dwight. So I feel like she wouldn't have been so quick to be like, yeah, I'm okay with her.
I liked her in Florida before she came back, like you said, because she was a good lightning rod for seeing how our cast deals with this crazy boss. Stanley doesn't care. Ryan is, I think he's trying to be impressive, and Aaron's gullible. Dwight's trying to go for a VP move, and Jim, of course, is the voice of reason. We see all of them bouncing off of the insanity that is Nellie. And so she should have stayed in Florida and not been part of the gang. Yeah, also, absolutely. Todd Packer should have stayed fired. Him being fired at the end was a great send-off to that character, I think, but then he came back.
Yeah. I didn't mind his like. Oh, you mean he came back to Florida? Like you didn't like him in Florida?
I mean, Todd Packer.
Yeah, yeah.
I liked that because remember at the very end of that, because remember Dwight was going to get fired, and
And
then
he did.
Jim
Yeah,
tackles him, and then instead of Dwight getting fired, Todd Packer got fired. But then the next season, somehow Todd Packer came back and was in a season 9 episode.
that episode he wasn't working for them. He just brought in those cupcakes as like
Oh, I
a
thought he
way
got
to get
hired back
back.
again. I haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Like, just I'm not a big Packer fan, but I didn't mind that episode because I liked the cast's reaction to being drugged or
Was it
laxated.
laxatives? Yeah,
I don't
laxated.
know.
That sounds cool. It's like, oh, I'm just laxating all day, man.
Especially Dwight Jr.'s, where he's just like, so, like what he did is like, so not my best night, but not my worst night.
Yeah.
I like that line.
I will admit, outside of the finale, season 9 is not entirely fresh in my mind.
Yeah, there's parts that I remember, and there's parts I like. It's the athlete crap.
Oh yeah. I remember Daryl killed a fish.
That's true. He did. And we had a funeral for a bird.
I just love that is like a Creed line that's actually true, and I don't think Jim ever found out. But like, why wouldn't Pam have told Jim like, "Hey, we had a funeral for a bird"?
Maybe. I mean, it might also have been so inconsequential. But like, all right, we did that. I mean, Jim would have found it by watching the show. Been like, oh, hey, you actually did.
Yeah, it's interesting. All the watching the show, how many fights would have started from everybody watching the show? Because Andy would have found out exactly how much he got cheated on by Andy and Angela and Dwight during their engagement.
Yeah. Yep.
I keep going back to that. It's just like one of my go-tos.
In life, just in general.
Yeah. Angela cheated on Dwight or Andy, not Dwight.
You well, she did. But you get to like this spot where and like you're at a job interview, you're like, I can do this. If Andy can move on after getting cheated on by what's her Angela. My gosh, my brain, guys, it's broken.
Yeah.
I'm just screwing up jokes. All right, let's here.
It's like Ross's my sandwich moment.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, just briefly, because there's really not much to talk about it. In Saved by the Bell, like they finished the finale and then they needed more episodes, and then two of the girls, Kelly and Jesse, weren't available. I think so. They made like a handful of episodes with a new girl, and then they aired them intermixed amongst each other. And it's like, who is this new girl that only shows up at the end, acting like she's part of the gang? Who's Tori and where's Kelly and Jesse?
Yeah,
And
who's that girl?
Yeah, who's that
It's Jess.
girl? It's just C. Yeah. But it wasn't. The
Oh,
new
was her
girl
name
Tori.
Jessie? Oh, okay.
Well, Jessie was one of the girls that wasn't there. Tori was the new girl.
Man, how poetic would that have been?
That would have been.
With me not even knowing who this is you're talking about.
And now, like in any like Saved by the Bell reunions and stuff, they never mention her because she's just so inconsequential.
She was the new kid, but she had military parents, so she moved around a lot.
Was she? Actually, that might have that was Slater who had military parents. It's like that might have been right.
Well, what an easy way to write that. Like, oh yeah, they had new orders, so they had to go somewhere else. So
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So Matt, do you have any more before we go into our trivia?
I don't, but I do have something I wanted to ask you to keep you on your toes. You didn't prepare for this, but the Muppets have been around for many, many years, and they've had so many characters added over that time. Okay. Who would you say is the worst Muppet that was added to the roster?
Worst Muppet added to the roster. I'm trying to think of ones who were significant enough. I mean,
yeah, it's like there's a lot that didn't work, and then they just didn't bring them back.
Okay. A character that was around for a season and then of Muppets Tonight in the 90s and then never came back. Seymour the Elephant, who was just boring. He was actually paired up with Pepe. It was Pepe and Seymour were a pair. They would come out and make dumb jokes, and they got rid of Seymour and they kept Pepe.
You know who I think I would pick? I don't know this character's name, but it's the turkey. The female turkey. She's like in the new Disney Plus series that she did like a cooking show.
That was boring.
Yeah. I'd seen her in something else besides that, but I never was like, oh, good, this character.
All right, yeah, that's thanks for keeping me on my toes there. That is, I thought about the Muppets, I'm like, you know what, all the big ones are good.
I just figured there's like so many that they added. It's like there's got to be one that didn't
Yeah.
didn't do right. All right. Well, we had trivia last week. So Brian, what was last week's trivia?
It was multiple choice. It was which of these politicians never appeared on Parks and Rec? Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Newt Gingrich, or John McCain? And the answer was Barack Obama never appeared on Parks and Rec. His wife did, Michelle Obama did, but he never did.
Correct. All right. So this week's trivia, we'll go back to Lost. And so Lost, there was a number of characters who died or left the island or whatever for some reason or another, didn't come back on the show. But there's one character that the actor or actress didn't want to come back, and that's why this character left the show. So which character was the one that purposefully asked to not come back and be written off?
I know this one.
I figured you would.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that's it. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I was just looking at the dates and when this is going to post. We are 3 months into this great year so far. There's been a lot of great TV on. I've been surprised actually at like how much Apple Plus TV that I've been watching, because there's a couple of shows right now that are on there that are new episodes. Plus, we've had a couple Pedro Pascal shows across different streaming services. Yeah. There's been some good TV this year. Oh, a Poker Face. My wife and I just finished the first season, and that's actually really good. If you've got Peacock, go watch that. So let us know, what are some shows that we haven't talked about or that you want us to talk about coming up? What are some shows that you're like, you haven't talked about this for a long time, or you have some episode ideas? Let us know, shoot us a message, and get in touch with us. And so we'd love to hear from you.
All right.
All right. Well, until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.